That veg guy is doing another video, and I want my pencil back. John Wick 3, yes, but I haven't seen it yet, so don't tell me. I love John Wick, so when one of my viewers requested a John Wick gold coin, I leapt at the chance to cast one with the Lost PLA technique. I began with Fusion 360, creating something that looks the part. It's not exact, so don't get picky about the details. I knew that the biggest hurdle I had here was in printing the coin, so I made allowances for that. It also gave me the opportunity to experiment with print depths. To give the coin a 3D quality, I worked in layers. Each layer on this side is just 0.2mm deep. There was a little more detail on this side, so the layers are 0.1mm deep. So I had my doubts whether anything would actually print. The coin is 50mm or 2 inches in diameter, which is quite large, but I've seen commemorative coins about that size. Bigger would have looked daft and smaller would have hidden the details. All in all, I was quite pleased with the coins. Printer lines were obvious, along with a few annoying snot lines, but the lion looked good. What I'd planned on being whiskers looked more like an open mouth, so I decided to go with that. The lady wasn't quite as clear, but at just 0.1mm depth between layers, it was still pretty good. There's too much for me to try and clean up here, so I just used the very tip of a file to lightly scrub away any obvious imperfections. But that was it, no other cleanup. The prints aren't too bad. It's just a standard home printer, a Creality CR10S, so perfection isn't really possible at this scale. I bonded the two halves of the coin with precisioning wax. I literally smeared it on, putting a very thin layer on each. I then used a little sprue wax to fill the join and then lightly sanded it smooth. I decided to do away with the sprue of my printed sprue base, so I just cut this off. In last week's video, I mentioned that where I have thick castings, I would try using risers. As this coin would be around 6mm or 1/4 inch thick, I felt risers would be needed. At its simplest, a riser is merely a thicker section before a thinner one, so I decided to use this wax sprue for that purpose. I can't make my mind up if it looks like the coin's going scuba diving or whether I'm modelling a new Starship Enterprise. Either way, I was hopeful that the coin would have ample feed and resist shrinkage. Huh? Up until this point, things have been going surprisingly smoothly, so don't blink or you'll miss the terrifying bit. Yes, the crucible fell, showering 1000-degree puddles of fire everywhere. The reason for this slip is these grooves on the crucible. I hadn't noticed previously that these wear away. Look at the crucible that fell, there's virtually no groove, so there was nothing for the tongs to grip. So please be more vigilant about this than I was, and make sure you wear safety gear. In a mad scramble, I hopped between the red hot puddles and placed the flask back in the oven, whilst I put out the fires, collected the spilled bronze, cleaned it and melted it again. So about an hour later, still flustered, it's hardly surprising that I forgot to focus the camera properly. Now once the flask is out of the oven, it cools quickly and the plaster can begin to crack. So as my flask had been out, in and out again, I wasn't hopeful. But thankfully it didn't look too bad. The risers seem to have done their job. There's no sign of shrinkage, though perhaps it wouldn't have shrunk anyway. So is it perfect? No, there are imperfections. There were always going to be with a 3D print, and the Crucible escapade may have taken its toll, but by and large I was happy. Not bad for home casting with largely homemade equipment. I hope you enjoyed this one guys. Take care and thanks for watching.